Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got some folks joining us, and we're also recording the session, so it'll be available online after the session. I'm going to do a quick introduction before we get started. My name is Tim Wiedemann. I'm the Senior Economic Developer at the Ulster County Office of Economic Development, and good morning. On behalf of Ulster County Executive Mike Hine and the Ulster County Economic Development Alliance, welcome. We're pleased you could join us for this first of 3 webinars for restaurant owners and managers focused on growing your business and increasing profits. Before we get started, a few logistical items. For those of you that are new to the GoToWebinar platform, I'll point out a few key features. By now, if you can hear me, you've figured out how to join the audio portion of the webinar. Your registration confirmation email contained a link that will also allow you to follow along on your computer as we move through the presentation contents. You should see our title slide now. As we move through the presentation, we'll have all the participants in listen-only mode. You'll be muted for the duration. This prevents background noise from interfering with the audio portion of the presentation. If you have a question, please use the chat feature in the GoToWebinar panel. The panel sometimes is hidden, and you can expand it using the red button with a white arrow that's usually up in the right-hand corner of your screen. Your questions will come through to us, and at several points during the presentation, we'll pause to give responses, and at the end, we'll open it up for any remaining questions, and we'll unmute your lines if necessary for you to ask questions verbally. We'll wrap up sharply at 11 a.m. so that you can get on with the rest of your day. Now, I'm happy to introduce the brains behind these webinars, Janet Irizarry. Janet is a business consultant who specializes in restaurants. She works with existing businesses to help solve the problems they're facing and works with new businesses to get them up and running and avoid the costly mistakes that are often made by first-time restaurant entrepreneurs. She has a track record of over 35 years of owning and operating successful restaurants, has written several industry white papers, and is a contributing columnist for the food, wine, and spirits section of the Hudson Valley News Network. In her spare time, she volunteers for Duchess Outreach's Lunchbox program and is involved with Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, both local organizations dedicated to feeding the hungry in our community. Today's session is titled 10 Steps You Can Take Right Now to Increase Your Profits. Janet has put together a highly informative and practical presentation that we hope will give you some immediate actions you can put into place to make your restaurant business even more successful. Now I'm happy to turn the mic over to Janet. Janet, thanks so much for putting together today's session, and we look forward to listening as you go through.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Welcome to the Recipe for Restaurant Success, and I'm really excited to be here and happy that you could join me. I know how hard it is to get away from the restaurant and schedule time to improve your business, but you're here, and I hope I'm going to give you a lot of great tips and also motivation to make some changes on your restaurant that are going to make you more money. First, I want to thank Tim and Ulster County Economic Development Alliance and Ulster County Executive Mike Hine for hosting this webinar. With working with them, it's quite evident how interested they are in helping you improve your business and grow and be successful. And that's what I'm here to do for you today. Now, this first webinar series, the first part of the webinar is, hold on, I'm just trying to move my screen and it doesn't want to. All right, sorry for the little technical. Of course, we tried this all before and it worked perfectly fine. Okay, here we go. The recipe for achieving new levels of success for your restaurant. We're talking about, first we're going to talk about the 10 steps you can take right now to increase profits. So on November 7th, at the same time, same place, we're going to talk about how to gain visibility and attract customers by leveraging the power of the internet. And on December 5th, we're going to talk about increasing sales by building strong customer and community relations. Before we get started, oops, I'm sorry again. Okay. Before we get started, I want to give you a little background on me. Now, I know Chris just gave you a little information, and up on the screen you're going to see my credentials, but that's not really what I want to start this webinar by talking about. I want to give you a little of my background. I started in the restaurant business when I was 15, actually working for McDonald's. And then in college, I did the normal thing, bartend and wait tables to make money. I met my husband up at school in Plattsburgh in 1980, and in 1981, him and I moved to Arizona to finish up our degrees. And we shortly got married and had our first child. After the birth of our child, we came back to New York to visit, and we found out that my husband's family wanted to sell their restaurant. So we looked at this as an opportunity to make money and to be independent. And so what we landed up doing was we quickly sold our house in Arizona and moved back to New York to run and eventually buy my husband's restaurant. What I neglected to tell you was that my husband and I had absolutely no business background, and we had really little restaurant background. I mean, waited tables. But, you know, in fact, we actually had, our degrees were actually in geology. But to me, that's the important part of the story, because just like many of you who first get into the restaurant business, we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. We were like, how hard could it be? It looked like fun. But like myself, like you, and probably many of you out there, you have no formal education in the restaurant business. Neither did I. And although I spent hours attending workshops and seminars like you are doing now and reading about the industry, most of what I learned was from trials and tribulations. I had big successes, and let me tell you, I had my share of failures too. I had training from some of the best in the business, and I had training from some of the worst in the business. But that's what I'm here to tell you, is that it's given me a really well-rounded background. And I'm going to use that background and what I've learned to help you. All the strategies and steps that we're going to go over in this 10 steps are actually ones that I have used in my restaurants and have personal experience with, or have helped other restaurant owners use in theirs. They work for me, they work for them, and they're going to work for you. So I started the webinars with the 10 steps you can use right now to increase profits, because it was really important to me that in this webinar series, you were able to take action and start making more money right away. So these steps are going to be simple. Most of them are simple. Many of these may be so simple, in fact, you might even say, "Ooh, why didn't I think of these?" But each strategy alone is not going to make you financially successful. But what I want to emphasize is not the pennies. It's the pennies that add up to dollars, and the dollars that add up to more dollars, that land up giving you less stress because you're making more money, and basically you'll have a more enjoyable business. We all know that restaurant owners work too hard not to get every penny they make into their wallet. So I'm going to give you some really great strategies to do so. So let's get started. First, we're going to focus on ways to make more money. And there's basically two ways in my recipe for success. The first one is to increase efficiencies. And the way we do that is by putting in systems and procedures that are going to monitor what you do and make sure you know what's going in and out of your restaurant. And it also is going to give you more consistency in both your product and in your services. The second way to make more money is to increase sales. And increase sales, we're going to look at two ways, and that's to get more customers and get those customers who come in to spend more money. Now, the efficiency is the most important part of the equation, because without efficiency, by bringing in more customers and potentially doing more sales, you could lose more money. So 10 steps you can take right now to increase profits. We're going to put all that with the efficiency and your increased sales into a little bit of a formula. And I've identified 5 areas that are eating up your profits. And there's a lot, and I hope the 5 that we cover are ones that you're having problems with too. But if not, we can talk about the many others there are. Then we're going to, with the 5 areas, I'm going to give you steps that will help make those losses less or either increase the profits, your sales. And then we're going to really talk about attracting new customers and some really great ways you can go about doing so. Problems that are eating up your profits and how to lower your costs. If any of you right now want to put in the chat box where you think you might be losing money, hopefully we'll get to they'll be included in those 5 areas that we're going to talk about. But if not, we can get to them later on in the chat, the question and answer at the end. And sorry about those sirens if you can hear them. All right, so the first area, we're going to talk about payroll. Now, we all have payroll, obviously, and payroll and your labor costs are going to be tied to how much money you make. And let's take an example about what labor is really costing you. The average labor cost for a restaurant, give or take, is 30% of the revenue you bring in. If you're a restaurant that brings in $750,000 worth of sales, then if at 30%, your payroll, or what you're going to pay out to your employees, is going to be $225,000. That's at 30%. What if we could take that amount and lessen it by 1%? So you're only going to pay out 29%. Well, your labor costs are now at 29%, $270,500, which means that's an annual savings of $7,500. And I always like to equate numbers and what I can buy with that. And what I can buy with that, I immediately think of a really nice Caribbean vacation. Okay, so we realize that we can save money through labor. How are we going to go about doing that? Let's take one scenario. Let's pretend that you are, not pretend, let's say that you're open for lunch and dinner. You have 3 servers on at each shift, which is giving you a total of 14 shifts. And you were able to cut back each of those servers' hours from 6 hours to 5 hours and 45 minutes, which, so you're looking at cutting back 15 minutes. What is that going to save you? When you do the math, that's going to come out to be a weekly savings of $78.75 if you're paying those servers $7.50 an hour. Now remember, this is going to be prior to taxes. Okay, so what's the savings? You're looking at saving over $4,000. But what if you could do that same scenario for your busboys, your hostesses, your dishwashers, and your line cooks? We're talking substantial money. So that's well and good, but now you're going to ask me how we do that. Well, I'm going to give you the ways. In our first step to seeing more profits, one is to observe and adjust. Did you ever notice how work expands to fill the time? That's the Parkinson's law. Well, what does that mean? In other words, let's say you gave Bob, your line cook, 30 minutes to peel potatoes, but it could be done in 15 minutes. How long do you think it's going to take him? It's going to take him 30 minutes. Or let's say, another scenario, you have 2 servers that are scheduled to do the side work that one person could do in 1 hour. How long do you think those 2 people are going to take to do that side work? 1 hour. Okay, so what we're going to do is observe our staff at 3 critical times. The first time we're going to observe is the time they enter the restaurant to the time they clock in. What do you see? Are your employees coming in and heading straight for the time clock to punch in, and then they go into the bathroom or locker room and put on their uniform, their makeup, maybe again they're just going to text a friend really quickly, maybe they got to go talk to Bob, the line cook, for a little bit, or are they coming in and they're going to get totally prepared and going straight to work? It's important that you make it policy that they punch in when they're ready to go. The second time you're going to look at is clock in to the start of service. What are they doing? Are they doing their side work? And more than that, at what pace are they doing it? The scenario I just told you about 2 people doing the same work that one person could do in an hour is a perfect example. Are you able to stagger the time the staff comes in? Could one person come in at 4, the next person come in at 4:30 if they're servers? The first person starts the side work and then takes the first table, and the second person continues the side work and maybe stays a little later? You got to think about these things and then adjust. Thirdly, the last guest to leave to the time people check out. At the end of the shift, at the end of the evening, is there a sense of urgency to get out? Or is everyone just sitting around, rolling silverware, chit-chatting, having a soda? You know what I'm saying. And is the busboy sitting there waiting for his ride home while he's still punched in? You need to look at this stuff. It's really simple. Look and observe. I would say do this for a week. And once you observe, then adjust the schedule as you see fit. Let's move on to problem area number 2 that I've identified, and that's the trash, and that's what you are throwing out. Okay. What is food waste costing you? Well, according to the statistics, the average percent of food that lands up in the garbage in a restaurant is approximately 10% if you look at the combination of quick serve and full serve. Now, every dollar that gets tossed in the garbage is stuff that you paid for, and it's silly not to put systems in place that will keep you literally, you're throwing out your money. So we got to figure out how we're not going to do that. And once again, we're not going to get totally rid of waste. I mean, it goes without saying, we have waste in a lot of produce, but a lot of it also can be used. But let's look at the numbers again, because once again, I'm going to go back. When I see dollar signs, I always think of what I can buy for that money that I'm losing. So food costs, let's go back again. And the food cost, once again, equals 30% of your sale, which is about average. If you're quick serve, it's probably less. If you're fine dining, it could be more. We're going back to that scenario of $750,000 for revenue. So that makes your annual food bill $225,000. That's scary in itself when you think about it. So at 10% food waste, that means that you're throwing in the garbage $22,500. Now, as I say, this is the average, but if you're not actually controlling this, there's a chance that you're throwing out a lot more. But if we can lower that, and once again, we're not going to get rid of it, and I'm going to be realistic. If we can lower it to 7%, you're talking your food waste is now only just under $16,000. Once again, that's a huge number. If you could save that amount of money a year, that's another great vacation or a down payment on something. All right, so we talked about the numbers. Now we need to look at how we do it. And your first step is to track your waste. And one of the simplest ways of cutting down on food waste is to hold people accountable. So basically what you're going to do is let nothing get thrown out unless a manager sees it. So think about this. What I'm going to ask you to do is to remove all the trash cans from your kitchen. Yep, you heard me right. Remove them and replace them with these clear containers. Now, any food scraps go into those clear containers. And just the mere fact that your chef or your kitchen person might realize the fact that when he fillets a fish, that you're going to be able to walk through and see how much meat is still on that fish, is going to automatically change their habits, because people act totally different where they know they're being watched. Okay, so you're going to use the clear containers, and once again, it gives you the opportunity to see, think of a celery stalk, and someone's using celery for the chicken salad, and they cut the celery, and they only want to use the good part, and they throw out this other part. How much of that are they throwing out, and how much is it costing you? So once you get the clear containers, before they can be thrown in the garbage, they are going to be weighed and tracked. And once again, the weighing and tracking of it is just showing that the staff that you're accountable and that you're actually watching them. You don't really have to do anything with those numbers because it's quite a process to really, get granular about it. But what you just want to know is what is going in. For example, strawberries go bad in the walk-in box. Right now, they just get tossed in the garbage. You may never know it, but they have to be thrown in a clear container first, and the possibility that the staff is going to see, that you see, that's going to just alleviate part of the problem to begin with. And then you got to put into policy to have rules on taking out the trash. So not anyone can just take out the trash. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit more depth when we get to the next section. But make sure that everything, it's just not a given that everything gets thrown out. It needs to be examined first. So that's one way to limit waste. I'm going to give you another way, and that's to stay organized. And basically, we're going to talk about produce and the stuff that can go bad and spoil in your walk-in box easy. And there's a 4-step way of lessening how much produce is being thrown out. First of all, you're going to date it, and you don't need these high-fangled, beautiful labels to do so. Masking tape and a Sharpie will work just fine. But you're dating everything that comes in. And I'm going to talk about produce now, but this is a system that you should have for your frozen items and also your dry storage too. So you're going to date, and then you're going to make sure to rotate. And you're going to ensure that the older foods don't get pushed to the back and the newer foods are used first by using the first in and first out method. So you're going to date, then rotate. Then I call it designate. If you didn't notice, these all rhyme. I put these together just so maybe they stick in your memory or my memory. But what you're going to do is designate a certain area of your walk-in box to place the items that are past their peak or about to pass their peak. But they're still perfectly good. But in this area, you know that these items should be used up in a timely manner. And then this is the fun part. So we got to date, we got to rotate, we got to designate, and then we get to create. Now this is the fun part. Remember, these foods are perfectly good. So create with what's ever on these shelves. Make specials, use stocks, make soups, stocks, make your employee meals. But the bottom line is, if this was going to be stuff that was going to end up being tossed, every cent you make on these items are making you money. And, you know, food waste is a big issue right now, and if you haven't really gotten in on the movement, you will soon, because it's the biggest trend that's happening in the restaurant industry right now. So step 3 in seeing more profits is to stay organized and date, rotate, designate, and create. Moving on to problem 3, and that's employee theft. So how about this? The National Restaurant Association says operators are losing 7% of their annual revenue to theft. Scary, right? Who's stealing? Well, according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, 75% of employees steal. Now, I question whether it's intentional or unintentional. Yes, a lot steal intentionally and devise ways of stealing food or stealing money from you. But then you also have that sweet little waitress who just likes to be nice, and she just gives everything away and doesn't really realize what she's doing. And but that's stealing too. That's taking money out of your pocket. And so we know that people steal by stealing cash directly, by stealing product, giving freebies, punching in early or punching out. Punching in early, we just talked about payroll, and doing short rings or avoiding items. So how do we alleviate or lessen cash being stolen from us? And the first way I suggest is to do audits at for the bartenders and cashiers, anyone who has their hands in a register. So a common way for a bartender or cashier to make extra money is by ringing it up as a lower price. And once again, I'm really asking you to think like a thief. I mean, it's not something I would have thought of. But so for example, as the bartender, he orders a gray goose. A customer orders a gray goose for $11, and your bartender knows that's what's going to ring up $11. He sees the customer take cash out of their pocket, and he says $11 for the gray goose. He takes the cash, the $11, and he goes to the POS but rings it in as a call drink, a well drink, for $6. He puts the whole $11 into the register, and at the end of the night, when he reconciles the draw, what he does is he takes a POS reading, knows how much cash he owes the restaurant, and the rest of the cash goes, you got it, right in his pocket. So if you can do these surprise audits, what will end up, how you do them, is you actually have a second drawer that you bring down in the middle of shift at some time. And you take his drawer or her drawer out of the register, You run a report, and then you reconcile the draw and see if it's right on. If you're continually seeing overages, you know that there's games being played. So that's one way when you're looking right on cash. If people are stealing cash, that's one way to look at it. Conduct a surprise audit. For food items, which can be taken, it's to do a daily inventory. And this is pretty simple. I'm going to give you the best scenario because this is, let's take Budweiser. You get beer in. How easy is it to slip a case of beer out the front door? Or how about just continually giving it away? And once again, we should be doing inventories on all our products, but this is on key items that you think that either are high-ticket items or are easily given away. And you're just going to basically start the day by counting, for the example of Budweiser, you're going to see how much Budweiser you have in the walk-in box. You're going to count the cases. You're going to count the cooler. You're going to count for if anything comes in during the day. You're going to add that to your tally. And then at the end of the night or the next morning, you're going to see what you have left. You're going to look at the POS reports and find out how many should have been sold. And obviously, those numbers should match. If they don't, well, and we all know that with the bar, it's a little bit different. We do give out freebies, but those freebies need to be tracked. And, you know, when you look at it and there's, you know, 2 cases of beer gone, that's a lot of freebies. And understand the most important thing, it's not what you paid for that case that you lose the revenue on it. That's a lot of money. So I did this in my restaurants for beer, some liquors. I had lobster tails and steak, crab legs. Those are the things that I'm looking for because people love to take things home and have it. You know what? Sometimes they even think they deserve it. It's the truth. The 6th step in limit is to limit your access. Now we're talking about walking things out the back door. Well, if you don't let people come in and out the back door, then you lessen the chance of someone stealing. And nothing makes me more crazy than the back door being a way that people come and go. To me, I want to know who's in the restaurant at all times, and I also want to know that nothing's being brought out. No one's stealing a case of beer through the front door. And it's just too much of a temptation, plus the fact that people from outside can come in and take things. So do not let your employees, or I'm going to say your delivery people either, go in and out the back door. Make them come in. Make them enter the restaurant from the front door, introduce themselves, let them know that you know they're there. And the one other thing, as far as no entry on the back door, if you're going to have any place that has a camera, I suggest it be on your back door. Okay? So now that we've limited the access, and we talked about the garbage too, we talked about trash, and we're going to have only, you know, certain people take out the trash, so it's not a whirlwind of people coming in and out of your restaurant. All right, let's hit problem area number 4, and these are more fun. Your menu. Let's talk about your menu and how it's eating up your profits. Basically, nothing's going to work harder for you in your restaurant than a well-designed menu. So, is your menu working for you? My question is it making money? Or is it just a way that you tell your customers what you have and how much they're going to pay for it? Let me ask you a question. It's a great question, too. If you had the choice of having people, if you had the choice of having people order what you wanted them to order, what would that be? I'm going to say that it's the items that make you the most money and you get the least amount of complaints about. Well, guess what? You can do that. And that's all a part of menu engineering and menu design. So what a good menu does, it actually helps you attract people to ordering the stars of the restaurant. And what the stars are the ones that are win-win for everybody. The customer loves them, and you love them because you make money on them. Now, I will tell you, the bad news about the menu, it's not one of those easy things to fix. But the good thing about it, it's going to show you the biggest returns. And I've seen menus that their sales and profitability has actually increased up to 15–20%. And it depends on what you are doing now. It's going to determine that. But that's huge. So is your menu taking a bite out of your profits? It is if the pricing is outdated. It is if it's not telling your story and giving part of the experience and helping you to brand who you are. It is if it could make you more money. And it is if it doesn't help encourage people to spend more than they intended to spend. So let's talk about the menu and how you need to start by analyzing your menu. And analyzing your menu is, what does each item cost you to make? What do you need to charge for each item? Once you find out what it costs, what do you need to, and there's a few factors that go into that. And which items do you want people to order? I mean, you have control here. This is an awesome thing. And how do we do that? Well, when we analyze the menu, we look for things. First of all, every item on your menu is going to fit into one of 4 categories. You got the stars, you got the workhorses, the dogs, and the puzzles. Okay, stars. Obviously, that sounds good. The stars are the ones that are high popularity and high profitability. So those obviously are the win-win all around. Now you're going to ask me what a workhorse is. That's one that's really popular but may not make you the most in profits. I'm going to give you an example in my case. On my menu at one of my restaurants, I had an item called Lobster Mania. And what it was lobster stuffed with lobster. Obviously, costs money, it's a high-ticket item, and we made the decision to not overprice it so people didn't order it, because it was a great item and people craved it. And when they left the restaurant, they told their friends, and then after a few weeks, they just had to have it again. So to me, this was a workhorse. It was a signature dish. No one could get it anywhere else, and it kept repeat business coming back. So the workhorses are really important too. The dogs, well, are exactly what they sound like. Low popularity, nobody likes them, and they're low profitability. Puzzles, these don't have popularity, but the bottom line is they make you money. Now, think about this. Are they not popular because where they sit on your menu? Is there a way of making this item highly popular? It's highly profitable. Let's see if we can move it to being a star. So part of menu design is highlighting the stars, and I just want to show you an example of what I'm talking about. Is on your left-hand side is a dome. It looks like every single Italian restaurant you ever gone to. And maybe the manicotti in the middle there is your best, makes you a lot of money, but no one orders it because they can't find it. Versus looking at the stars and the way a menu is designed. And there's ways of attracting people to buy what you want them to buy. And put it this way, I call it professional boxing. If you put a box around it, people are going to order it. That's just the way it is. And you want to put boxes around your stars, your workhorses, and add-ons. Things like your house-cut fries that might get lost somewhere if they're not highlighted. You don't want to go crazy with boxing. I suggest, for every 10 items, maybe box 1. The other thing is, as an example with the house-cut fries, it's just using words that actually increase the value of an item. It not only draws people to it, but it's New York State cheddar, homemade, locally grown. These add value to what you have on your menu. You actually even can possibly charge more for these items. So, your regular house fries without the description, even though they might be the exact same thing, maybe you could get $5. Now that you added those pretty words and nice highlighting and that little tiny star, you can maybe make a whole extra $1. But you're talking about dollars, they do add up. All right, we're going to go on to the last problem area that I'm going to talk about in the webinar, and unhappy customers. And we don't even have to talk about just unhappy customers. I want to talk about the ones who aren't thrilled. Nobody has to tell you that anytime someone leaves your restaurant not happy or not raving about it, it's going to affect you financially. So many restaurant owners I meet with, it's they blame everything on the sun for them not being busy and not really understanding that they haven't wowed a customer. And you can't underestimate the power of an unhappy customer or one that's just not thrilled. And I'm going to talk about what I call the happy customer effect, because I hate to talk about the unhappy customer effect. You'll get what I mean. So what is the happy customer effect? Well, you wowed a customer. That's amazing. They had the most amazing time, and what's the first thing they do? They walk out and they tell everyone they know what a great experience they had. They tell their friends, they tell the people they work with, they tell their mom, their pop, the mailman. And if you're lucky, they actually even feel so wonderful, they go to Yelp and they write a good review and they tell the world. What happens then? You get more customers. And more customers means what happens? More money. And more money means, as I talked about at the beginning, peace of mind and more enjoyable business. I mean, it just goes without saying. And if we talk about the unhappy customer, is the exact opposite. So what do? First of all, we know we have to give a great customer experience, and it's a bunch of things. It's wowing the customers. It's not just great food. It's not just great service. It's the cleanliness of your restaurant. It's the atmosphere. It's the menu we just talked about. Does it tell your story? Hospitality. Is everyone friendly? What's the attitude of the staff? How do they feel? Do they feel better when they walked in than when they walk out? The culture, just everything you're trying to convey to your guests. And is the product consistency? I mean, we all know this. This is part of customer service. But the challenge is, how do we make sure the customers gain the wow? So I'm going to give you a system of how to make sure that your customers are being wowed. And it's basically, you have to have your staff accountable for it. Okay? And how do we check up on our staff? Because we're not at every table. We don't know. But there are ways that we can do it. So look and see what the gratuities are that your servers are making. Audit each credit card tip. And you'll notice a pattern on who's giving good service and who's giving not so good service. To me, a 15% tip means a person said, it was all right. You're going to be looking for tips that over 17%. And that's going to be a sign that someone had a good time. The next thing you're going to do is run reports and see exactly what your servers are selling. Have you been to a restaurant where you had this, a server comes over to you and they're just extremely cheery and happy, and you go to order and they say, well, did you consider adding this with that? Or, oh, you know, what wine goes perfectly? Did you want a glass or a bottle? You know, that's a great survey. And you ended up walking out and you spent more money than you ever did, but you kissed the waitress or waiter on the way out and you told all your friends because it was just an amazing time. So indicating a server that has the ability to sell more normally will be also evident on the gratuities, and you'll see actually a larger tip. But someone who's selling more is giving a better customer experience, and they're making a customer happy, they're making you happy, and they're also making themselves happy by making larger tips and great service. The next way you're going to do is comment cards. This is the easiest way, and so many restaurants don't do it. And you have to have customers fill out comment cards. You also need to have your servers initial them, so you know who exactly waited on that person. Comment cards they're not complicated, they're not costly. They are a simple means to find out information about what your customer is experiencing. And they give you a little idea whether and how to gauge whether they're being wowed. And I'm going to talk more about the comment cards later on this webinar, but also in future webinars, because the bonus of comment cards is on the comment cards, you're also going to ask them if they'd like to be part of your VIP club or be there to receive emails and promotions. And so you're getting their email addresses also. So there's an added bonus of being able to help them attract. Okay, so those are the 5 places. Those are 8 steps in 5 problem areas. Now I want to talk about how to actively attract new and repeat business. Once again, we're going to talk about all this is for naught if you don't have a positive customer experience. People aren't talking great about you. So I'm going to ask you kindly in your restaurant to attract new customers, stop thinking about advertising and start thinking about campaigning. Start thinking about doing marketing campaigns. And what are marketing campaigns? Well, first of all, marketing is the action of promoting or selling your services. And a campaign is a group of series of events that all lead to a common goal. So basically what it is little touches. Just like we're going through the presidential campaign right now, how many different avenues are people being touched? Basically, when you just advertise, send out one advertising, you have to make sure the person who's seeing that is in the right mood at the right time to even accept what you're saying. So you need to be in different places to touch different people at different times. And the whole point is to stay on top of mind. How do we stay on top of mind? Well, let's start with your website is one of your biggest marketing tools. Online reviews, you're going to use social media, print advertising, loyalty programs, targeted emails, Instagram, newsletters, and Twitter. And we're going to talk about the first 2, websites and online reviews, in a little bit more in depth in a few minutes. But all this other stuff is going to be covered in our next webinar. That's going to be on November 9th. So, November 7th. Oh my goodness, sorry about that. Anyway, let's talk about Ulster County for a minute. So did you know that the revenue that Ulster County tourism gave into tourists who came to Ulster County contributed to Ulster County's revenue was in 2015 over $500 million. Well, on the left, you're going to see all the reasons people come to this area. Pretty cool. We live in an amazing place. I love it. Well, do you ever think about marketing to these people? This is like a huge demographic. Let's say you could get 1/10,000th of that money into your restaurant. It's a lot of money. I don't think any restaurant would cry about getting an extra $52,000 worth of revenue. Anyway, so how do we do it? Well, let's go to managing. Step number 10, you're going to manage your online reputation. So star rating is the #1 factor used by consumers to judge someone's business. Online reviews can either extremely benefit or damage a small business. But the fact is 92% of consumers read online reviews, but they not only read them, they trust them. So we want to manage. Here's some other interesting facts about visitors, and this is from the National Restaurant Association. On average, tourism accounts for about 1/3 of fine dining sales and almost 1/4 of casual dining sales. And according to Harvard Business School, a 1-star improvement on Yelp translates to anywhere from a 5 to 9% swing of revenue. And there's other facts which I think are interesting. But the challenge is, how do we get the positive reviews? And we have to work at them. You know what? You can't take a negative review away. So bottom line is you have to go back with one. It's give great customer service. Give people the reason they want to review you. But that's not the only thing you can do. And the fact that you can't take negative reviews off means that you really have to stack the deck with positive ones. You got to do everything you can to encourage people to actually go home and get on the website and review you. And how do you do that? First, as we said, give a great experience. The second thing is you're going to ask for them. You got to like nudge them. And there's a couple different ways of doing that. Once again, we're going to go back to those comment cards. Now you have them filling out the comment card. They said they had a great time. What are you going to do? You're going to take an email. You're going to send it to them and say, thank you so much for I'm glad you had a great time. We would love for you to give us a review if you don't mind. and you touch them. And now you might offer them a discount. Now you can't offer them a discount in trade of a review. That's illegal. But you can do a little nudge. The other thing you can do is have postcards made or business cards that have your restaurant logo on them, and with a little discount that says come back next time for 10% off your visit. And on the other side say, we'd love you to review us on one of these sites. So it's a nudge, but you have to ask. But more than that, you have to talk to your customers and start the negative reviews before they even happen. I mean, bottom line is, if you go up to a customer and touch them and ask them, how was your dinner? And don't just ask if it was okay, because they're going to give you the answer of fine. Ask them, did we exceed your expectations? Did we do better? What did you like, what you didn't like? And you know what? You got to be prepared, because you might find out. But you get the opportunity to make up for any problems that occurred, and you can turn that negative experience into a wildly positive experience. So you got to stop the negative reviews. So monitoring your online reputation is the number 10. But I got to tell you, I was doing this PowerPoint, and I said, you know what? We have to get to one other thing, and that is, so I'm giving you a bonus one. And this we're going to go over, I hate to say vaguely, but it's really important that you understand this. And to dive in deeper, it's going to be covered in the next webinar series about claiming your online real estate. Our bonus is you have to have a great website. There's no two ways around it, because once people go to Yelp, let's say a tourist or whoever goes and asks the tour guide where to go to eat, the tour guide's going to say blah, blah, blah restaurant. They're going to take the tour guide's word for it, but they're also going to go straight to, they'll probably go to Yelp, and they'll probably go to your website. And the website is actually the front door. They're going to get a better impression of your restaurant from just going in it. So, you know, I just want to go over quickly what you need in your website. And then when we talk next webinar, you'll learn more how to make sure that you have these items. So the first, it needs to have rich in keywords. And keywords are words that people do when they Google search. So if they don't have the name of your restaurant, what they will actually do is Google something like waterfront Italian restaurants, Hudson Valley. Those are keywords. So those need to be put into the front page of your website. And once again, we'll talk about this more in depth. And I don't expect you to do this, but you need to know it so you can tell your web designer or whoever works on it what they need to do. Secondly, it has to be mobile friendly. No one's looking at your site if they cannot read it on the phone. And I forget the statistics, but what is it, 90% of all searches are done on a mobile device, so it needs to be done. You need to have updated content. Make sure your Mother's Day menu is not up come Labor Day or Father's Day. You need to have maps and directions, and once again, that also helps with your rich keywords, because it's all part of how search engines find you. And also the maps, if they're on their phone looking at you, they just click on it and it's all of a sudden just loaded into their phone. Simple navigation has nothing to do with directions. It's just, it makes it easy for them to find what they want to find. They want to find what your menu is. They want to find if you have entertainment. Make it simple. Don't make them jump through hoops to find what they're looking for, which goes on to menus. Don't have PDF menus, please, please. You can have them, but you need regular menus on your site too. First of all, no one's downloading the PDFs. Second off, we're talking about keywords and search engines, and search engines don't read PDFs. So everything you have on a menu in a PDF form is not helping you out when people search for you. You need quality pictures. Opt for no pictures if you can't get great pictures. But we're going to talk about pictures too and how they help you be found, because you're using keywords on those too. And last, you need social proof. People want to go to and visit you on websites of, on Facebook and Instagram. They want to learn the most they can about you. So that's my bonus. And that's basically all what we're covering. And for a quick review, I know I talked about a lot, and I know I talk fast. And as Tim said, this is going to be available for you to download or listen to. And also, we're going to send out the PDF version of the PowerPoint so you can go through it at your ease. We talked about 5 problem areas that are eating up your profit. We talked about payroll. We talked about trash. We talked about employee theft. We talked about your menu. And we talked about unhappy customers. And we talked about ways of making these problems areas not so much of a problem. Next, we talked about the 10 steps you can take right now, and I hope you'll at least take a few of these to get started. 1 is observe your staff at critical times. 2 is to keep track of your waste and really see what's going on. 3 is to stay organized in your walk-in boxes and your refrigeration so you don't let food go to rot. You're going to do cash audits on anyone who has access to a cash drawer. You're going to do key item inventory. You're going to limit access to only the front door of your restaurant. You're going to look at your menu and see how it can be designed to sell the things that you want to sell in your restaurant. And you're going to look for the accountability of the WOW. You're going to check credit card receipts and look at per person average and look at comment cards. 9, you're going to stop thinking about advertising and start thinking about campaigning for your restaurant. And 10, you're going to really look to manage your online reputation, well, your whole reputation, but online reputation. And bonus, you're going to invest and make sure you have a great website. And that was a lot of information to cover. And I'm open for any questions. I also just, on the bottom of the screen, I wrote the dates and times. Do I have that wrong time? I do. So our next webinar is actually on the 7th, not the 9th. My bad. And that will be to how to gain visibility and track customers by leveraging the power of the internet. And there's a lot more than this than you probably know. And any time you spend on this, it's going to really be to your benefit. And increasing sales will by building the strong customer relationships and community relationships will be on the 5th, and that will go more into depth about getting out there into the public and increasing sales by doing so. And I thank you.
Great. Thank you, Janet. We're glad to have your insights here, and thank you for your presentation. Quickly, I'm just going to reiterate, don't forget to mark your calendars for the 2nd and 3rd sessions in the series. On Monday, November 7th, Janet will explain how to use the power of the internet to attract new customers. And on Monday, December 5th, she'll round out the series with a session about how to build strong community and customer relationships in order to drive sustained long-term growth. All sessions are from 10 to 11 a.m., and you'll use the same registration link for the whole series. You'll get a reminder about an hour before the next session. Later this week, we're going to post a recording of today's session and the slides from today's session on our website, ulstercountyny.gov. Before you leave, I'm going to post a poll to this session, and if you open up your webinar panel, you'll see that poll come up, and we'd really appreciate your feedback just on today's session so that we can adjust and make sure that we provide the quality sessions that you expect. So you'll see that poll come up on your screen now. Please take a second, just answer this one simple question, and then we'll open it up and have a little bit of discussion if there are some questions from the audience. All right, so we did get one question while we were working through. Janet, could you talk a little bit about how you get your staff on board with some of these changes? I know some of them sound like they're going to involve some changes that people may or may not be thrilled about, and so how do you get people to go along with all this stuff?
Well, change is never easy for anyone, but you also got to remember who rules the roost. And, you know, it needs to be explained why you're putting systems in place. And, you know, I find a lot that the staff doesn't understand the value of $1 and what you actually make in the restaurant business. They don't understand that because you do a certain amount of sales that you're not putting all that cash in your pocket. And sometimes going over financials and showing you what, you know, things actually cost is enough to get them on board. The other thing is encouraging them that's all for the better to make their job stronger as far as being reliable to be there for a long time to come. And I also find out that, you know, staff are kind of like children. They like to have rules and systems put in place because they feel that things are more in control and that you have their back too. So it does take a little bit of time, and there are many ways, depending on what you want to implement to get your staff on board. But I would suggest not just putting them new systems in place without telling them the reason why. People need to know why things are happening to be able to jump on board. And communication in the restaurant business is just an integral part of the whole process.
Great. So if anybody would like to add a question, we're going to unmute the lines, and also you can use your chat window. So if you'd like to chime in with a question, please feel free to do so.
I've killed them. You know, they don't move. Yeah, they're weird. Yeah.
All right, we did get one other question. Janet, it has to do with the points that you made about developing a menu that really works for you. So can you go into a little bit more detail about how do you price your items in your menu? Can you talk a little bit about the ways that you would recommend to come up with the right prices?
Yeah, well, once again, this is one of the not simple ways to make more profits, but as I had mentioned, it will be the most profitable and you'll gain a lot from it. But the first thing you really need to do is price out every single item on your menu, and that means going through invoices and putting them on spreadsheets and actually recipe mapping. So for any item that's on the plate, you need to pull each of those ingredients apart, figure out what they're costing you, and then figure out what you're going to charge. And what you're going to charge is you're going to consider a few factors. One is what you're paying for that dish. Two, you do want to look at your competition, and because you don't want to price yourself out of the competition. I mean, and three is, as I had mentioned, some of the menu items might be workhorses. Maybe just people love them and you can't afford to get the real price for them, but you want people to order them, so you're going to make them a little bit more attractive because you know the word-of-mouth marketing is going to make up for any profits you're not making from it. And I'm not saying not to make a profit. You want to make something. You definitely don't want to lose, but you might not want to make as much as you would if you had to charge what you really feel you need to charge for. But now those menu items are highlighted, and they are an integral part of what we just talked about, marketing. And the other thing is, if you can add value to something and make it seem worth more, you can charge more. But and once again, the great thing about a menu is you can change it. And if you're going to redo your menu, you really need to not get it laminated right off. You need to have a working copy of it so you can tweak it the way you want. And you also need to understand that if you talk about product mix and the stuff you are selling, by changing up your menu and highlighting things, on any given Saturday night, you might have only, used to sell 12 linguine and clam sauces, but now because you figured out that people love it and it's a really profitable item and you highlighted it, now you're selling 30 of them. And it's what you want, but you have to be prepared for that change. So there's a little bit of a, you have to get used to it, a give and take. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that's great. I think that answered the question. And are there any other questions from the audience? If so, you can either raise your hand in the panel, I'll unmute the lines, or you can use the chat window. All right, I think that closes us up for the day. Reminder that our next session is on Monday, November 7th. And Janet will talk about the power of the internet to attract new customers. And then our final session will be on December 5th. Mark your calendars, use the same registration link that you were emailed when you signed up, and you'll get a reminder also an hour before the session begins. Check out our website, ulstercountyny.gov, for the recording of today's session and for the presentation materials. Thank you, Janet. Really appreciate your time today, and thanks for helping out Ulster County.
Well, it was a pleasure. Thank you.